Good morning. My name's Scott Evans. I'm the director of the North Slope Borough Port Authority. Can you hear me? No. Now can you hear me, Bill? Okay, you got it. So just kind of repeating the recurring theme here. I want to welcome everybody to Utiqiagvik, all of you that haven't been here, all of you that have been here before. It's not often that we get to host conferences or symposiums like this, so we appreciate it. Appreciate everyone coming up, taking your time to come up here. And I think we are relatively lucky that it's not 74 or 75 degrees like it was, because it's pretty warm in here right now, and I think it's just going to get hotter. So a little bit about me. I first moved here in 1991. My dad had moved up here in 1990, working for search and rescue. He was a helicopter pilot.
You really do have to eat the microphone a bit more.
Okay, that's just feels really weird. So my dad, he moved up here in 1990. He was working for search and rescue. He did a couple tours in Vietnam, so we traveled a lot growing up, following him around. So he moved up here in 1990. I came up in 91. It's been my home since. Certainly have seen a number of changes. I think everyone who's been here a while, back then, I think kind of Labor Day was the unofficial ice frozen on the creeks and the lakes, so you could go hunting. People would go out caribou hunting then. Now it's mid-October, maybe it's much later. So my wife's born and raised here, so we're always going to have roots to be around for a long time. So it's really important to me because my kids are going to be here, my grandchildren are going to be here, great grandchildren, and not just from my immediate family, but just we have a lot of extended family. So it's really important for all of us. And certainly the challenges that we're facing right now, we have to somehow be able to get them under control, or it's certainly a different future than what we're all hoping for right now. So I'm at Port Authority now. Previously, I was working with Bernadette at our CIPM department. So I've kind of had some experience with thinking about coastal or permafrost degradation and coastal erosion on that side, kind of the project side. But when we moved over to Port Authority, our primary goal is multimodal connectivity for all of our communities, and looking for ways the quality of life for our residents. As you guys know, and as you'll find out when you fly out to these communities tomorrow, it's really remote. The only way you can get somewhere is basically by flying on the plane. Whenever plane's flying, there's a lot of factors that can prevent you from doing so. So it's important for us. We're trying to figure out ways to improving that quality of life, right? That's lowering cost of goods sold. It's one of our major challenges with building homes, as Griffin was pointing out, is that just the cost, the logistics. It's hard for somebody to be able to do that on their own. So you end up with overcrowding, 4 generations under one home, one roof in one home. So trying to figure out ways that we can help improve that. So we'll talk a little bit about the coastal erosion efforts and just the effects of coastal erosion so far, what we've experienced so far, what we kind of expect to continue to see. We'll talk about seawalls, and we're right in the kind of on the cusp of a very important seawall project here in Utiqiagvik. That's a U.S. Army Corps of Engineers project that we're partnering with them on. And then we'll talk about, it was brought up a couple times, so kind of a good segue. Talk about roads connecting our communities and how we're trying to move that forward, and just talk about what we've done so far for us to get to that point. So if you look at the pictures here as we kind of move forward, the upper left here is Point Hope. The state right now is working on a realignment of the runway. Where it sits currently, it's facing erosion at the very end of it. They've had to, in the past, prevent larger planes from landing because of what they were dealing with some of the wave action, some of the eroding of the ground that's there. There's a number of ice cellars. Excuse me. Ice cellars are siglalogs that have been there for hundreds of years, and they're washing away as well. So it's not just infrastructure; it's also cultural, historical sites that are still being used, and it's very important for the community. As you move over to the top right, that's Utiqiagvik. Hard for me to see from here, but you can see the old runway that was the old military runway, kind of down at the end of the little spit there. Had to move that because often that runway would be covered with water when you have a storm in the open sea times, open without any ice on the sea. So they're losing some of that land as well. Also, where the Jul29 site, Bill mentioned Jul29 sites and all of our communities. There's some kind of built on the bluffs. They're losing quite a bit of some of that bluff surface from erosion. Down here on the bottom left is Wainwright. There's been a couple efforts in Wainwright. There's still a seawall there, built of mainly just kind of larger size rocks that seems to be holding up. But there's still quite a stretch of bluffs just from the south of there that are facing erosion right now too. A lot of sloughing, some wave action can actually damage them. Bottom right is Point Lay. Point Lay is a little bit because they have some protection from the barrier island, but you think Point Lay has already moved twice as a community?
Our third location.
Yeah. So third location. So they've had to move already because of erosion and coastal erosion. So it's important to try to protect those barrier islands to prevent that water from coming over. And then I think you even had some erosion kind of on the northwest side of the bluffs there, the taller bluffs, a couple years ago when you had a lot of wave action. So, and then Utiqiagvik here in the middle, and that's we'll get into that a little bit more with the seawall and the efforts that have taken place there so far. So here's just kind of a slide that depicts some of the storms that we've seen over the years. The top left is 1963 storm. It was, I think it's considered a 200-year storm. There was did extensive damage. There's even some of the Quonset huts out here in Gnarl have or had high water marks on them from the flooding that took place all the way out here. So that homes washed away. Looks like a car is about to wash away. So there's quite a bit of damage there. As we move forward, Ives was talking about working on an offshore dredge. There was a storm in 2004, I think. We had a dredge program up here where we were taking gravel from the sea bottom and would put it back on our beaches. The storm in 2004 actually it damaged our big dredge to the point we couldn't use it anymore. So we had to shut down the whole program. 2015 is a federally declared disaster. I think this one, as you can see from here, this is from out here at Gnarl looking back into the community. Excuse me. Wiped out a bunch of our gravel sea burden that we have out there right now, that's what it's there for, right? It's supposed to protect us. We know it's temporary. We just put it out there to slow it down any way we can. Moving to the next one is another federally declared disaster, 2017. Very similar. Before 2015, we hadn't had a federally declared disaster for a number of years. And then we had two back to back. And then following up, we had a couple more local emergencies and 2 or 3 years after that in between each other. So it just kind of shows the how quickly now things are evolving. The number of storms, the severity of these storms, they all seem to be increasing. And that's something that we've been noticing for a while. And then if we go to all the way over to the fourth one on the top, it's a little video of the storm that we just experienced last summer, which was unique in a way that we actually saw erosion when we had strong southerly winds. So winds coming directly off the land. Typically what we have to face is sustained winds of 30 miles an hour for about 30 hours straight out of the west to see significant erosion. And this last year, we had winds coming directly off the land, but a low sat right offshore. And as we walk kind of through these videos here, as we keep showing them, oh, we did something wrong. Just kind of gives you an idea of what we're facing when it's going on. As you drove out here, you saw the long length of the gravel berm that we face. So we're trying to combat this while it's happening real time, but it's a long stretch. Limited amount of heavy equipment, limited amount of heavy equipment operators who can actually do this. So here's an example of trying to protect our drinking water source, which is that tier drinking lagoon. And this is, once we lost the berm on the coast, waves are then trying to come up and over that, the little berm that we have between the lower lagoon and the middle lagoon. So we're out there facing that, trying to protect it. And here's just a couple more pictures. Or slides I'll go through real quick, videos so you guys can see. It's interesting because where the waves crash, where they break, it's just right on the shore. So it's not like they don't crash typically when we're having these storms 20 feet out and then slowly roll in. So they're crashing right on the shore, causing significant erosion as we go. This last slide here is that's showing, I think it's called Mound 44, which is an archaeological site. Pretty much all of those bluffs that run from the fur shop south have artifacts of some sort in them, remnants of old homes. So, you know, important historical context here as we're trying to protect moving forward. All right, so you can see some of the efforts, and tomorrow when we go on the, I'm going to meet a few folks over by the first shop that we can kind of show some of these efforts that have taken place so far. We pretty much throw everything we have at it, right? It's anything we can do to try to slow it down. We know it's a losing battle, but if you don't do anything, you're going to experience that loss much quicker. So we've used these sandbags that we fill up and try to put them along the coastline to try to shore them up. We've used HESCO baskets, which have failed miserably for us in 2 locations now. We've buried large tanks on the beach. They used to, you couldn't see them as maybe 10 years ago. Now they're almost fully uncovered. There's tar barrels that were laid along the coast a number of years ago that have been exposed the last couple of years. There's concrete matting that's down on the ground. So it just shows you the level of effort that our region and our community has been taking over the years to try to stop something that's obviously, you know, the force of Mother Nature. That's pretty powerful. And as I mentioned earlier, we're kind of right on the cusp of you know, a historical agreement with the Corps for a 5-mile seawall to protect our community up here. And once we get to that point where we have acceptance from the assembly, our mayor is allowed to sign the project partnership agreement with the Corps, and then we can start moving forward. We can look to get the project out. If everything falls in line, the project, we should see significant movement on the project next March season. They'll start bringing rock in to get ready to start working this. Quite a stretch, 5 miles. Obviously, we're gonna have to break it down into steps. We're looking at what we consider to be the most vulnerable spots right away. We're starting from first shop to the playground. If you guys have driven by there yet, you'll notice that we're right now ongoing efforts trying to beef that up for the fall season. But that's our first focus, and then we're going to try to run south along those homes that are on the bluffs to try to make sure we can protect those homes. We really don't want to have to move anybody's house. We want to be able to keep them where they're at. And so there's a lot of hope. We do understand that we need to start. The Corps understands that we have to get going. Because the longer this plays out and everything with, when you're dealing with different governmental agencies takes a really long time. But we have to get going, so, you know, it could take anywhere from 7 to 10 years to complete it. So we just know we have to get it started. Get some rock up here, start moving. The other thing we wanted to talk about was the connectivity that I brought up earlier. There's a project right now called A-STAR, which stands for, probably mess this up, but I'm gonna give it a shot. Is it on there? Oh, never mind, I can read it. You guys can read it too, so I guess I don't have to read that out. And this is, it started as a collaborative effort between State of Alaska DNR and the North Slope Borough. The seawater, the ice roads, the ice trails that Griffin had mentioned, that I think even Ives had touched on, that was something that's was a proof of concept for what we're thinking with more permanent roads and connectivity there. And we're at a point now where we're working on a pre-environmental linkage effort, basically mini EIS for the Triangle Road project, which would connect Utiqiagvik, Wainwright to Utiqiagvik. And the thought process being eventually you have to connect over the Dalton, because that's really what's going to help drive those costs of goods sold down. But this is a project or a program that's really driven by communities. We look at it as region wide. It has to have support of the communities. It's not something we try to force down anybody's throat. But there's a lot of promise. You know, we don't have actual numbers as far as that I'm aware of, planning me, but as far as the amount of money that's been saved utilizing the C1 over, you know, shipping or waiting even till the barge season, because that, you know, if you're only two ways to get things in, or shipping, which is, or flying it in, which is very expensive, or barging, you've got one, you know, that barge is in August, right? So you have to wait a year, or you have to pay the extra cost. So if we can have a year-round road system, it's going to do wonders for quality of life, lowering the cost of goods sold, accessibility to building materials, and it's pretty much, the opportunities are endless at that point. Oh, I guess I got ahead of myself a little bit, but it's the Triangle Road project that we were talking about. There is one of the something a challenge that we're facing is gravel, right? Gravel's it's worth its weight or more in gold up here. There's not a lot of great gravel sources. So we did some gravel surveys between these communities on the proposed routes, and found there wasn't any, right? There wasn't any viable gravel sources that we could really tap in to build something like this extensive. So there's a proposed 2-mile test road that allows us to use other materials instead of just gravel. We're trying to use, you know, we know there's some more sandy material. We're going to try to use some of that and just try to figure out ways, how do we build this in different ways to see what's going to withstand or hold up to, you know, our summers and our winters, and the difference between both. So that's something that's in the works. You know, we're probably a couple years out from that actually being built. The DOT is on board with this now. The borough partnering together, so it's a DNR, DOT, and the North Slope Borough. So strong collaborative effort trying to move this forward. A lot of promise in that as well. Once again, I got ahead of myself. So this one, here's kind of the proposed route, but that's just initial thoughts. We're really trying to figure out what makes more sense. The idea was to get out to the first material site that had these, you know, kind of alternative materials that we wanted to look at. Maybe it makes more sense to build a gravel road to there and then run from there elsewhere, so you have access. Stuff we're still trying to work out. And that's my presentation. So I take some questions if anyone has any.